Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa says that government is placing much needed focus on the taxi industry and particularly at a National Taxi Lekgotla, which is taking place at the end of October. For more on this, I'm joined by Mr. Bonolo Ramakhele, and he is the Treasurer General at the Black Business Council. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon, sir. Now, when we look at the taxi industry, if you could just break down for us the essential nature and the role that an efficient public transport system plays in our country and indeed in our economy.
Afternoon, ma'am, and afternoon to the Newzroom Afrika viewers at home. First and foremost, as the BBC, we're very much enthused and very much happy that the President of the Republic will be attending the National Taxi Lekgotla on the 29th of October, which is in 2 days' time. This firmly places the taxi industry on the national agenda, and it means that the South African government is taking this matter with the utmost level of seriousness. And to answer your question, I think it's the same thinking that the government is seeing, that you cannot have a functioning economy if you do not have a transport system that works for the majority of the Republic. If you want to have, this economic recovery happening. So the taxi industry currently carries more than 15 million trips a day. It is a 60 billion rand plus industry, and it carries more passengers than all modes of transport put together. So you have to have it functioning optimally, formalized, and benefiting the people who actually carry it, which is black business people in the industry, and also formalizing driver contracts and so forth to make sure that it adds even more into the fiscal.
When we talk about the formalization of the taxi industry, what exactly are we talking about? If you could just zone in on that.
Look, there's two main pillars that we as the Black Business Council are looking into, and that is pledging support and working in conjunction with one of our affiliates, which is Santaco. And those two pillars is the empowerment and regulation. Under regulation, you are looking at formalizing how actually taxis get operating licenses and permits so that they can be able to operate on our roads. That means that there are certain minimum standards that potential taxi operators have to comply with in order to be able to curb road deaths, accidents, and so forth, and also to know who is on our roads doing what. And that formalization will also mean that Santaco is going to start playing a role in terms of issuing those particular licenses. And I think that, government and Santaco will find each other to ensure that Santaco plays a role in issuing licenses and ensuring that the right people get licenses so that we don't have a situation whereby, we've got road deaths on the road. It also means that drivers have to be formalized, meaning that drivers getting employment contracts, registering for UIF, payee, compensation fund, and so forth, so that they themselves, when they find themselves either out of employment or needing to take leave and all sorts of things, there are benefits that they can be able to benefit from. And also from an empowerment perspective, this means that we need to look at the whole value chain, and we have been punching this in all our engagements with the government and other stakeholders, that the entire value chain of the taxi industry needs to be owned by the industry. That means even from the financial services perspective, manufacturing of tires, manufacturing of the vehicles, fuel, ticketing, and so forth.
Now, the industry at the moment generates in excess of 40 billion rand of revenue per annum. What are the major overhauls that would need to take place within the taxi industry in order to make sure that this type of income, that this type of turnover actually benefits the economy in its entirety?
Look, from a formalization perspective, immediately you will have, VAT, being a tax that can be collected by government. You are going to have income tax that can be collected from the drivers. You're going to have UIF filling the coffers of the unemployment insurance fund and so forth. But in fact, the 40 billion rand figure, it actually is more. If you take into account the downstream activities that happen in the industry, that currently the industry, particularly the black operators and owners, are not benefiting from, but it's your established white-owned businesses that are benefiting from a large chunk of the activities of the industry. So it means that when we go forward, we are looking at an overhaul of the entire system. It means even a simple thing of how the taxi is actually financed. We are welcoming the idea of a cooperative bank, and this bank is going to be capitalized to ensure that taxis can go to that bank and be able to get financing and funding to be able to buy vehicles, as opposed to what is happening now, where they are being abused by financial institutions, charging them exorbitant interest rates. It means that in terms of manufacturing of tires, there should be cooperatives to manufacture these tires, and the market and the customer effectively being the industry. So we're biting it chunk by chunk so that the entire value chain ultimately is owned by the operators, and it benefits operators, drivers, queue marshals, rank officials, even people who are cleaning in the association offices across the country.
Mr. Ramakhele, where do you currently stand as far as integration with e-hailing services?
In fact, there is it's just that it's still under discussion, and it's something that is, we're still discussing in confidence. Santaco has put forth a paper on an integrated taxi system, actually an integrated transport system that will enable South Africans to have access to reliable, cheap transport 24 hours a day. And that is working with various other forms of transport that includes your e-hailing and includes your buses, BRTs, trains, etc. And that will also then include that, and it just makes sense that Santaco would then have to take over some of those operations in order for them to function optimally.
So let me ask you this. If Santaco does take over these operations, are you not then curtailing any sort of competition? Surely there can be other e-hailing services and other stakeholders outside of yourselves.
I think you need to look at it from a perspective of economies of scale. Santaco is the largest form of transport, and taxis are basically the bedrock of the transport system in the country. So you need to ensure that you work with them if you want to have a transport system that works for the majority in the country. And if it means that there needs to be vehicles, or there needs to be companies that are put in place that are going to have a stake or ownership in different what you call forms of transportation, whether it's the buses, etc., then it must be done. But it's quite a comprehensive paper that looks at how do you solve the transport problem holistically, as opposed to doing it in piecemeal, saying that this is my corner, this is my little corner, this is my little corner. But let us find a way of actually working together in unison to solve the quagmire that is the public transport for the entire country. Because one of the things that is a problem is that the economy cannot move, because certain activities come to a screeching halt at around 6 p.m. in South Africa because there is no transport. So how do you have the transport machinery working even longer, 24 hours a day.
But
it means that you have to...
Let me ask you this before I let you go. Unfortunately, time is not on our side. Does this mean that you are somehow advocating for some sort of a monopoly? Would there still be room for smaller independent operators and businesses to be able to thrive in the transport sector?
Of course, they would still have... in fact, Santaco is not a company that owns all of the taxis in the country, so there is no monopoly as we speak. This means that we're just saying that the different forms of transportation and the different forms of public transport must work efficiently. And if it means that we have to consolidate some of those forms of transport into one, then we must do it in order for them to have economies of scale, so that you don't end up with some forms of transport charging you 300 rand and some other trips, forms of transport for the same trip charging you 10 times less than that. So we don't think this will create a threat of a monopoly, because as it is one of the most competitive forms of transport, if not the most competitive in the country.
Mr. Ramakhele, thank you so much for your time.